Hi, and welcome to Sound Check by Support Act. This is Luke from Support Act. And before we embark on today's discussion, I want to remind you that if you're in need of support of any kind, to call the Support Act Wellbeing Helpline on 1-800-959-500. We've got qualified mental health practitioners and also financial counsellors that are there waiting to chat with you if you are a member of Australia's music industry. So that includes if you're an artist, if you work for a label, or you're an independent manager or work in the crew field, that they're waiting for your call. Today I'm joined by Tom Harris from White Sky. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me.
There seems to be have been quite a lot of developments around the JobKeeper subsidy in the last couple of weeks since it was announced, and we thought it would be good to get you back on to have a bit of an update and a bit of discussion. I know just from being on Facebook, there's still quite a lot of unknowns and who qualifies and what to do to actually get it. So hopefully we can shed some light on those areas today.
Sounds good.
First of all, do you have any kind of thoughts initially on where it's heading to?
I guess a lot has come out since we last spoke. No major overhaul changes, but a lot more detail. Which last time we spoke there was a lot of vagueness. I mean, the gist is still the same. Any business with a drop in turnover of 30% is entitled to the JobKeeper wage stimulus, which means that the government will give them $1,500 per fortnight per employee, which they are then need to pass on to their staff. So, it's the idea is so that they don't have to cut staff hours or to make their staff redundant, and it should work well. The eligibility thing, there was a lot of questions around that. Probably the biggest question that we were getting at White Sky from music industry businesses and bands and other businesses was the eligibility of partners or directors of companies. So the partners of a partnership, or who are not actually employees, are they eligible? And in the cases where they're both, where they're also paying themselves a wage, then yes, they are. They can treat themselves as employees. But in the majority of cases where they're not, only one director or one partner of a business is able to claim the JobKeeper wage stimulus, or wage allowance. So that's disappointing. At least it's something. But it's disappointing because a lot of bands, 3, 4, 5 people in the bands, who this is their main source of income, only one of them can actually receive the money. The money does not have to be paid to that person. They can split it, but it only comes in for one person, and everybody else, I guess, has to go to JobSeeker. Is the logic? Yeah.
So it would only be one payment of $1,500 a fortnight if that was the case. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. Cool. So can you see any other changes around eligibility and the criteria for that?
Well, the other big question mark was before, and sort of still remains. It was the example that they gave was comparing your turnover this year compared to last year, the same period. So there've a little bit more detail on that. So you can do it month to month. So you can look at April this year and look at your turnover, compare it to April last year, and show that the drop was 30%. You can also do it for a quarter. You can say April, May, June, like an actual financial year quarter. It can't just be any 3 months. It's got to be a financial year quarter. Compare April, May, June with April, May, June, last year. You can also do it. You don't have to do it started in April. You can start it in May, June, July. You can, if your turnover hasn't dropped yet, it's for some reason you're still able to work. There's an after. There's a flow-on effect from work that was happening beforehand, and then your income drops in July compared to July last year, then you can claim the JobKeeper from that point on. The good news is that once you qualify in a month or a quarter, you don't have to reapply each month. You qualify for the length of the JobKeeper period, which is up until September 27th.
Okay. And that applies for all types of businesses, doesn't it? So sole traders, this also applies to them?
Exactly, yes. So for sole traders, sole traders can claim it for themselves. Obviously, a sole trader is just one person. They don't need to have paid themselves a wage. The eligibility criteria for sole traders is a little bit different. They still have to show the 30% drop on income of revenue, but but they don't. They just have to demonstrate somehow that they are actively working in that role, and have been, and are still kind of open for business even now. So it's where it's tricky. So you might be a sound engineer and you've always worked if you can show that you've always been working, you've got invoices and money coming into your bank account, you can say, yeah, look, this is my job, this is what I do to earn a living, and then you can show the 30% drop, and you can say, I'm not working now, but I'm still available to work. Then that qualifies.
Okay.
The one thing that disqualifies someone in that position, which goes for partners and directors of companies as well, is if you have another job, another form of income which is permanent or casual for more than 12 months.
So, for example, I'm a freelance musician, but I also have a job at Support Act, which is a part-time position.
Yep.
I wouldn't qualify for JobKeeper in that scenario.
Exactly. Yeah. So that can kind of backfire. This is a kind of a tricky one because you might have it makes perfect sense when you think about it. It's like, well, if you've got another job and you're still doing that job, you might be a web developer, a software engineer or something, and you're still getting paid to do that. Where it kind of sucks is if your part-time permanent role is like a small amount. It might be one day a fortnight or something. If that's the case, then you're actually better off not having that job, and then so that's where it might catch out, but I expect that's pretty rare.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to hone in on a couple of terms that people are probably encountering when they're doing their application, that kind of the drop off in revenue from this year to last year, they're calling that the turnover test period. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and also the next question being about being GST registered. So a lot of the criteria they talk about looking at BAS periods from this one to last year's. It doesn't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily be GST registered. Is that correct?
No, you don't. Most businesses are, so that's the terminology they're using, and it's a lot of it's based around GST. But if you're not GST registered, you still qualify. You just have to find another way of showing your drop off. If you're not GST registered, because another couple of the criteria requirements for all businesses, including sole traders and partnerships, is that you have to have either lodged a BAS in the last this financial year, or completed your tax return for the 2019 year as of March 12th, I think it was. And that can be problematic. We're still kind of waiting to get a response from the ATO for that one, because if you're not registered for GST, then obviously you haven't lodged a BAS. If you haven't lodged your tax return at May 12th, you haven't actually done anything wrong, because the deadline is not until May 15th. So I think we're still watching that space. I think we're expecting them to renege on that rule and extend it to May 15th. But you will have to have done your tax return, that's for sure, before you'll be able to get any supplements.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that does toss up a lot of or some issues, especially for people who are looking to access Support Act's crisis relief services. I mean, what should a company or a sole trader do if they haven't lodged their tax returns in some time? It's gonna create a barrier to the JobKeeper, is it not?
Absolutely. You're basically not going to, if you haven't lodged your tax return as it stands now for more than 2 years, you're going to be struggling, because and it makes sense from their point of view, as you can imagine, because you can sort of fudge it and make it look like you've been operating a business when you haven't or something. So they're basically just sort of saying, if you haven't lodged your tax return, initially they said if you haven't lodged your tax return at May 12th, then you're no chance. But as I said, I think they're going to loosen the regulations on that one. But if you've got a whole year outstanding, you haven't done your 2018 taxes, then you're going to struggle for JobKeeper. Job Seeker, which is the one through Centrelink, the unemployment benefit, they also require tax returns to be up to date, but you can do them anytime. You can rush those through. If you've got a few years, backdated, you can rush those through now and be eligible.
Less scrutiny potentially of tax returns for the job seeker, considering it's meant to be the welfare safety net.
Absolutely, the job seeker is a lot easier. There's a lot, and the other thing, I mean, there are some benefits
on the phone.
yeah, that's true. Oh, that's true. Like you have to deal with Centrelink, and then you have to deal with Centrelink ongoing as well, which can be a pain in the ass. And I'm not sure where that's at in terms of having to look for work and all of that. But the difference is roughly $300 a fortnight. So JobKeeper is more money, But then there is also the requirement to continue to do the books and and lodge the information with the with the ATO. So there is a bit of work involved.
Yeah,
in the application ongoing.
None of it's easy, I think, is what we're finding out.
I suppose not. That's true.
I guess they're trying to make it purposefully that it's not easy in some respects.
True.
This is unprecedented, so
that's right.
Good luck to all of them, I say. So my next question is, if the business has only started in the last year, but has still lost 30% since then, does the business still qualify for JobKeeper? I know that's a bit of a
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because there's a lot of situations where the comparison with last year to this year, the same period, 3 months or 1 month, just doesn't fit, either for businesses that have only just started, or for, say, bands or managers who have lumpy income, where the income's up and down, and maybe the band was,
etc. Festival,
right? Maybe they were in the recording studio throughout March, April, and May last year, and so they didn't really earn that much money. And then they had a massive tour that was supposed to be happening, and they had to cancel it. So there's a sort of an asterisk where there's where the alternative to the comparison of previous years is called the alternative test, but they haven't really released much information on that yet, and they're releasing some guidelines soon on what will fit into that. It might be just a matter of sort of answering a bunch of questions, but it's going to be kind of at the discretion of the treasurer to decide who qualifies with that method. I'm assuming, with just logic and common sense, that if you're a band and you can show that you had a whole lot of shows planned and they all got cancelled, then you'll be okay. So, but unfortunately, I can't answer that definitively yet. We're still waiting.
But potentially a bit of extra scrutiny might be applied.
There could be, yeah. We don't know. I mean, there's going to be a lot of businesses and a lot of individuals who are in that boat, not just in the music industry. So it can't be too much scrutiny. They can't be sort of, a lot of it will have to be going. We'll just have to be filling out a form and accepting it, kind of what they call self-evaluation. So you decide yourself based on the guidelines. Am I qualified? And if you tick all the boxes and say yes, I am, then you get it. There is also the other thing, the flip side of that to be really careful about, is the ATO are already making some, pretty serious threats about anyone who rorts the system, and they're sort of saying we will come back and do reviews in, when the dust settles in next year or the year after. They'll go through and they'll do a lot of audits and make people pay back money if they don't think that they were eligible. So it's best to make sure you are checking and ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, most definitely. Probably a good time to get in touch with yourself, Tom, I would say.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yep. We're definitely doing a lot of scrutiny, a lot of checklists.
I mean, with all of this, just to deviate from the questions, I mean, we spoke about it in the last episode that we did together, but I guess people can do this themselves, but there probably is a bit of this where perhaps seeking some support might benefit people. I think
definitely if you're one of the grey areas, if it's a little bit unclear, then yeah, absolutely, because myself, like all the guys at White Sky, as well as all the other music accounting firms that in Australia who we're talking with regularly about all this, we're all doing all the research to make sure that we're giving the right advice and making sure that we're getting it right for all the clients. So absolutely. Having said that, if your business is pretty clear cut, then the actual process itself is really easy. Logging in, and there's a few questions and fill this out and stuff. It's not a complicated form, so it's definitely something you can do by yourself. But as I said, if there's a grey area, if there's something you don't quite fit the criteria, then it might be best to get a second opinion.
Okay, so it might depend on the classification of business that you are, whether you're a company, sole trader, trust, etc. But does the wage condition, where they are asking for continued payment of $1,500 until the JobKeeper kicks in per fortnight, apply to sole traders? And if not, can applicants be back paid?
No, it doesn't apply to sole traders. So that or partners in a partnership or directors of a company. So as long as the only criteria for all of those, if it's your business, if you're the owner of the business, the only criteria is that you can show that you are actively working in it, because people can own a company and have nothing to do with it. So you need to be able to show that you are actually running the company. And same likewise with a sole trader. You can have a sole trader ABN and not actually do any, and have a full-time job, not actually do any work. So so as long as you can show that, and that's sort of up in the air as to how you can do that, but it's different for every single person. It was like, if you're working somewhere, if you're clocking on, if you've got emails showing the work what you're doing, whatever. So but if you can show that, then that's okay. You don't actually have to be paying yourself the money. So that rule is there for businesses with staff who are not owners of the business. They have to be paying those wages.
So for any, like, there would be some music industry companies who are tuning in for a listen.
Yep.
So I guess that would apply to them. So that condition of, they're trying to encourage businesses to continue paying their staff up to the $1,500 threshold, or subsidizing higher wages even.
Yep.
That's kind of the intention.
So that's exactly right. So if you run a booking agency, and you've got 5 staff, and all the shows got cancelled, so you had to sort of lay off your staff. In order to get the JobKeeper, you have to reinstate those staff and start paying them straight away. You have to, in fact, you've only got until, I think, the 26th or the 30th of April. Anyway, it's in the next week or so to pay those staff for the month of April, and then you get reimbursed in May. There's a lot of kickback on that point, because the logic is a bit shit, as you can imagine. If someone's business has gone collapsed because of all of this stuff, they probably don't have a lot of cash lying around to pay their staff for 5 or 6 weeks while they wait for the money to come in. But at the moment, that is how it is. You just have to find the money, pay the staff throughout April, and then you get reimbursed in May. And then you have to pay them in May, get reimbursed in June.
Okay.
And so on.
The pressure is on. There's deadlines and everything now. So
it's not easy.
No, not easy. So with all that said, I mean, what should business owners do today, like sole traders, companies, etc.? What should they be doing today to get started?
Well, I guess getting your books up to date, getting all your that information, depending on what level. Like if you're running a bigger business, reconcile your accounts and enter all your information in Xero or whatever. If you're a small sole trader, get your bank statements and make sure you've got all that information. If you've lodged BASs, make sure they're all up to date. That's the first thing, and then going to the ATO website and registering your interest. Get onto that. I think that the deadline for that, I think, is the 26th of April. The deadline for the payments, if you have staff, is the 30th of April. So jump online. I can send you a link which you can include in the post for this, and get all that registered. That's about it, I guess. Oh, and then just make sure you are eligible. Look into it. Look into all those questions. Look into the questionnaires about the dot points of what you have to the criteria you have to meet in order to be eligible. Make sure you are eligible, and that's pretty much it for now. And then pay the wages to your staff if you have staff.
Yeah, of course. So with paying those wages, I mean, the last question I have for you is, for company owners, do they have to deduct PAYG payments from JobKeeper installments?
Yes, absolutely. So the $1,500, good point, is the $1,500 a week is before tax. So so tax needs to be deducted and paid to the ATO. Also, superannuation needs to be paid on top of that, only for the hours that are worked. So if you've got a staff member who you've stood down, say using that booking agent example that I gave, the staff may not be actually doing any work, so you don't have to pay super. But if you then get them to do a few hours a week of market research or something, then you have to pay the superannuation on those few hours. Okay. And I think it's the same logic, I think, for annual leave and sick leave accrual. That only accrues for the hours that the staff are actually working.
Pro rata basis.
Yes, of course. Okay. Yeah.
All right, great. Is there anything else, any other information you think is really relevant at this point in time for people who are still kind of a little bit unsure of how to access the JobKeeper? I think,
no, hopefully we've covered everything. I'm sure there are some questions, but I mean, we've put a page on our on the White Sky website. I'll send you the link to that as well, which has got a sort of a question and answer thing on all of this, on JobKeeper and all the other government stimulus measures. So you can jump in there and sort of just go through question and answer. If the question you've got isn't there, then shoot it to us and we'll try and answer it and add it to the Q&A.
I guess at this point in time, one thing that we've been really trying to communicate to people is that these are really, stressful, scary times for lots of people who are unsure about where their next paycheck is coming from. But that the process, once you kind of find the right information sources about how to navigate it, it doesn't have to be that complex. And if JobKeeper doesn't work out, there's still a Centrelink process. We understand that people are going through tough times, but it can be navigated.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's tough times. That's for sure for everybody. And but these measures are pretty good. They're probably about as good as you can expect. So and I'm sure they're going to give a lot of people a lot of relief. Whether it's the JobKeeper, or if you unfortunately don't qualify for that one, then as you mentioned, there's Job Seeker, and then there's other, family and rent assistance benefits you can get through Centrelink as well. And then there's you guys.
And then there's us. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tom. That's Tom
All right.
Harris from White Sky Accounting. Really appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Thanks, Luke. Talk soon.
For anyone who wants to reach out and get help, make sure you contact the Support Act Wellbeing Helpline on 1-800-959-500. We have a team of qualified mental health practitioners and also financial counsellors who can support you through this tough time. And they also understand people working in the music industry. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.